and swallow right before. Okay? Yep, I'm all right. Chew the mints first. It is 4:36, and I'd like to call this meeting of the Student Conduct and Support Committee meeting to order.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to motion that we approve the agenda.
There's been a motion, it's been properly seconded to adopt the agenda before us. Is there any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We have an agenda. Dr. Hummer?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Erskine, Mr. Chair. So thank you for your patience with the setup for today. As you know, we have a work session scheduled later today, and to save Nina and the custodial staff from working in less than 3 seconds to reestablish the room, we just decided to have the floor set up in this way. So thank you for everyone's flexibility. So we are very excited to present to you an update of where we are with the recent adjustments that we made to the Code of Conduct. We're going to be providing you with general updates to where we are currently, with an update to the cell phone policy, the dress code, bus, as well as some other behavioral type updates in regards to where we are with data. We are also going to be discussing next steps with some possible changes and adjustments that we will make. We also have representatives from the schools here. Thank you to Mrs. McCoy, Mr. Glasscott for being here. They will be available to answer any questions or to dive in a little bit more in regards to the current practices, some challenges they're facing, as well as progress that we're making as well with our new Code of Conduct. Also to remind everybody is we are going to be providing an update twice a year. So we're going to do it in December as well as in May. And then, of course, if we want to have more meetings throughout the course of the year at the will of the board, or if there's something specific we need to talk about, we will do that. So with that being said, I will now hand it over to Mrs. Jordan, and we'll get started. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hummer. Good evening, board members. I'm excited to give you an update of where we are with our Code of Conduct and provide you with some data. So we're going to get started with just a general update of where we are. And if you recall, we have a Code of Student Conduct Committee that is comprised of various stakeholders, parents, high school students, staff, and administrators. We meet at least twice a year. The purpose of the committee is to review the Code of Conduct to see what's working, what's not working, to provide feedback. And this committee was a great source last year that led to several of the updates we'll discuss in just a moment. We've already had our first meeting. It was on October 27th, and we're already to a good start this year. But based on several things, including the Code of Student Conduct Committee, changes at the General Assembly, and then just also taking a look at what needed clarification. This is just a general reminder of what we updated for this school year. One thing we wanted to do is include all SBAR codes, including PD codes. So we included that. A search and seizure section that is outlined in our policy manual, but it does directly tie to our Code of Conduct, so we wanted to include that as a reference. And then clarifying our dishonesty, theft, and property violation section. And then we added a resource section. So if you go to the very back of the handbook, you'll see several QR codes that will point you to various sources that address things connected to it, such as issues dealing with substance abuse and suicidal thoughts, those types of things, just to provide that as an additional resource for our families. We also, if you recall, Mr. Strong from Student Support Services has presented this, I believe, a couple of times, primarily to the Instruction Committee, that this year we did implement a bullying prevention implementation plan, and then also included a vaping prevention and intervention strategies for this year. As we go through the presentation, we'll talk about those and how that may be impacting what we're seeing in our schools. So the first area we're going to talk about tonight is our portable communication devices. If you'll recall, last year the governor did sign into law a bill in April that did prevent student cell phone use from bell to bell, so the entire school day. And if you remember, we also were ahead of the curve on this one. We had already pretty significantly restricted cell phone use before this law came into effect. The main things we had to change was for our high school students. Last school year, our high school students could access their cell phones during their lunch break and during class exchanges. Based on this law, we did have to update our regulation to 19R, and so now they're restricted during the school day, which is from the time the first bell rings until the last bell rings at the end of the day. Our regulation not only applies to the cell phones themselves, but also the accessories such as earpods, smartwatches, and iPads. And so here is some data. This data was taken beginning August 14th, which was our first day of school, until December 1st. And looking at how many discipline actions were inputted into Infinite Campus using BS 013, which is specifically a violation of our cell phone regulation, you can see where we are. Not surprising, there is a huge increase at the high school level from last year to this year, but that's to be expected since middle school and elementary, we didn't change their restrictions. They've been used to having the no cell phone from bell to bell. High school students, that's been a bit of an adjustment for our students, but you can see our administrators are on top of it, and they are addressing the use of cell phones. This was one thing just to highlight for the board. There are 2 presentations on board docs. The one from last week, we realized in looking at the data, it actually said that Sharando did not have, I believe, any, or it was 5 cell phone violations for this school year. As you can tell, that is not accurate. So when we started asking questions about why is Sharando so low compared to the other high schools, we realized that it was more of an issue with the inputting the data into Infinite Campus. So we were able to address that. The process has already been adjusted at Sharando, and so this is where we are based on the data that was run this morning, which is one reason why we have these updates, because we can see those discrepancies and start really digging into the data to see what's going on so we can fix them now as opposed to waiting from year to year. And so this is just another look at the data you just saw on the table. Any questions regarding portable communication devices?
Well, since we have the principal from Sharando here, I guess my question would be, of all those violations, how many on average would you say are repeat violations, and have you had issues with certain students not wanting to conform, I guess?
Yes, so we do have, there's a large contingency of students who have 1, and then when that parent has to come and pick it up, that's it, and we usually don't have an issue again. There are several that continue to have that, they've gone to having the next level. And most of the parents have been very, very supportive of this. We've had a couple that are not, they feel like it's a safety issue for their student, and if they have to come and pick up their phone. So we just really try to work for the education part of saying, if you can help us just remind them, as long as their phone is off and away during the day, then they don't risk having their phone taken because of instructional time. But if there's an emergency, they have access to it. If they don't have it out during the day, then they don't have an issue, then they always have access to their phone on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Ms. McCoy, while we've got you, I'll take advantage of this situation as well. Do you see at the beginning of the year you have more problems with, let's say, incoming freshmen, or because they just don't understand the policies yet, or is it maybe the totality of all the students, maybe at the beginning of the year, maybe after break, where, obviously the policy has changed, or you, like I said, you have those incoming freshmen, and maybe people have forgotten over the summer. I know you don't have a lot to work with there with only the 5 violations. So I don't know if we have a big enough pool of data to pull from, but are you seeing the violations more at the beginning of the year or now? I guess where I'm going.
Well, actually, we ended up having over 400 cell phone violations with that. So that's where they're talking, because we'd kept ours on a spreadsheet. And so we actually have since added all that into Infinite Campus. So as far as at the beginning of this year, as far as grade level, I think it was across the board. Some of the freshmen, I think, were more used to it because of middle school. They had the different parameters last year than what we had. So for us, I think it was more so our older ones who'd
Okay.
already had those habits. So we've had to go through and re-educate them on, this is the policy, this is the what and the why. And so we continue to do that. We actually are getting ready second semester. We go back and review the code of conduct with our students anyway, just because of that break and get everybody back on track again. Hitting the ones, that just targeting the areas that are in most of need of concern.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment? So I just think it's just the data scientist nerd in me. It's funny that like James Wood High School and Millbrook had a slightly higher reporting in 2024, and then you see it go down. So I would infer that we would probably see a drop in all of the schools next year because they've had like a high reporting rate this year, and it looks like those that had a higher reporting the year before prior are experiencing a lower rate this year. So based on what you're saying, that one is usually enough to be the deterrence, I think that's a pretty something that we should look out for, but I think that's promising.
Right. Great. So the next area that we are going to look at is the dress code. If the board will recall, there was a committee put together by Dr. Myers and Ms. Downey. The committee comprised of various stakeholders to look at the dress code that we had, and then to make recommendations about the best way to change it, what need clarification. And if you'll remember, the committee did have specific changes that they recommended. One is to include a narrative that explained the purpose of the dress code. One of the biggest changes was a prohibition on pajama pants and sleepwear, unless permitted by a principal specifically for a Spirit Day. And then they also changed how they measured whether skirts or shorts were too short, mid-thigh being much more subjective versus fist length, and then also requiring footwear to be worn at all times.
This has been one of my pet peeves, because I can guarantee you, and I haven't been to your high school to see it for myself yet, but I know that I'm seeing a lot of pajamas in school. I'm seeing pajamas at bus stops, and midriffs bare, the whole 9 yards. I have not seen an issue with the skirts. I will say that so far has been adhered to. I don't know how it's going on in your school, but are you addressing these things?
That's something we address every day. With the change of the temperature, that's where the pajama pants started appearing. So that's where we've, again, re-educate, that's not permitted here. And the kids have been receptive when we talk with the parents, usually one time, and for the most part, you don't see them again. Those that persist and try, then those are the ones that show up on the spreadsheet here. And we're
Miss-
still working on the midriffs and the new tucking of the shirt into the side and all those new trends that are out there.
Right when we think that we've got the trends, a new one pops up, right? So I have two follow-up questions about the dress code data, just because it looks like this number is really low. And I know that we still see a lot of this, and that's anecdotal, right? We can't actually track it. But are teachers and staff members feeling, do they feel safe and empowered to enforce these student conduct things when it comes to dress code? I know that's a source of discomfort for many, many, many of us, probably yourself included, just because it's a sensitive topic.
For some staff, and we just say, if you're not comfortable, they email down to one of us, and we go and pull the student and address them. And of course, in the hallways or in bathroom duty, we're always addressing students, and again, putting it on the announcements and reminders, getting ready to put it back again in the newsletter. So we're just trying to continually keep that conversation out there and those expectations, as we're trying to get them ready for when they leave us.
Do you think that just because I think I'm reading it right, just one at Sharando and then a handful, none at James Wood at all? And I know Shelley's not here, I don't want to pick on her. I guess I'm just curious, is that indicative of what we're really seeing, or is it just because of a reticence in enforcement?
I can tell you that 0 is not accurate
That's kind of what I
for
was
personal observation.
Right.
I did bathroom duty, and I sat there and I counted, and I had my little paper out there, and as they're walking by, pajama, midriff, earbuds in the ear, So I can tell you that that is not an accurate figure from James Wood.
Mr. Chair? Yeah. I think, just to clarify that, Mr. Chair, as well, from Coach, sorry, old habits die hard. But from what you said earlier, you guys only input this into Infinite Campus if it's a repeat offender. So you have the conversation first, and if the kid changes their behavior, and then the next day, let's say they show up with a midriff, you have a conversation, say, hey, that's not appropriate. They show up the next day fully clothed. It doesn't go into Infinite Campus. However, if they come back again with a midriff, if it's a repeat occurrence, then it goes into Infinite Campus, correct? Did I understand that correctly? Okay. That makes awesome sense. Yeah. Thank you.
And to Mr. Sturdivant's point and to Mrs. Jordan's point earlier, this is why we have these data reviews, to have conversations with administrators to make sure that they are reinforcing this and being diligent, because it is a policy, it is the code of conduct, and it is the will of the board that we stay diligent on these things. But the other aspect is exactly what you just shared. So Mr. Sturdivant and I think, have different experiences. He's seeing a lot of this, but when I was there a month ago, we were in the cafeteria. I was there on duty helping out, and a student walked by with a midriff. Shelly and I both locked eyes, and she's like, I'm on it. She went up to the student. They had a jacket. They put it on. It was a classic case, as Mr. Sturdivant just mentioned. She probably came to school with a jacket on, got to school, took the jacket off. It was inappropriate. She put it on. And Mrs. Andrews said that this is not a repeat offender. It's something that she addressed. But it is something that the administrators are on. It is something that we continue to reinforce. And the feedback is very helpful, because we want to make sure that we stay diligent and we're providing the right training for our teachers as well.
And Mr. Chair, just to follow up to that, if we don't mind, just with that knowledge and that context, can we go back to the cell phone data very quickly? I just have another question. So the uptick, so from 5 to 433, from 73 to 302 to 141 to 219, that's a lot, and that's a huge change, a huge delta. So just for Sharando, the 433, Ms. McCoy, are those 433 repeat offenders, or are there 433 first-time offenders?
433 offenses.
Offenses.
433 offenses.
That could be a mixture of both.
A mixture of both. Got it.
Because you
Okay.
have classroom, you have common areas, so it could be a mixture of both.
Okay.
And then once they get to the fourth offense on, then that goes to an ISA.
ISA. Yep. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
And to be fair, I'm not bashing James Wood High School and the staff there. I don't want that to be the case, but I know that I have seen the same students on numerous occasions wearing sleepwear to school. I sit at the bus stop every day, and I can that's again. Yep, that's again. So I see it. So I'm not bashing James Wood High School. That's not my intent here. But I realize that it can be a pain in the butt to enforce some of these things, and some people might not think they're that big a deal. But me personally, it's our policy, and it should be enforced. And I can pretty much guarantee you that if I see it at James Wood High School, I guarantee you, no offense, I can walk into Sharando and find it, and I guarantee you I can walk into Millbrook and find it. So I just think it's something that we need to make better headway on, but that's me personally.
Totally agree.
I think it's probably fair to say too, seeing this, seeing the fidelity of enforcement, especially when it comes to portable communication device data, I am supremely confident that all three of our high schools can do it. And I don't want to speak for everybody. I can speak for me in saying that I'm absolutely in support of you guys. I know sometimes enforcing these changes in the student code of conduct are not popular, but I want you to know that you really and sincerely do have our support, because if we ask you to do these things and then don't support you, that's just not right. And if, like Mr. Sturdivant is saying, these, especially with the attire and a PJ pants and all these other things, if you need more support, or if the other principals need more support in bringing this behavior up to snuff, I think you'll get it from the board.
And most definitely, and I've told this story before, not to beat a dead horse. When my oldest was in Frederick County Middle School, when it was over here, he forgot his gym clothes one time, and they made him wear someone else's gym clothes, and he ended up getting scabies and brought that garbage home, and it took me forever to get rid of that. So I understand the issues and things, but again, if it's our policy, then I think we need to enforce it. I understand people have issues, and some people may not have the stuff that they need. I get that. I've been to Bright Futures, but I'm not trying to sound overbearing on this, but that's just my personal thing. If this is the dress code, then we need to adhere to it, and I understand staff might not feel comfortable all the time doing that, but if I can see it, so can everybody else. And when I don't hear anybody addressing it, then I sit there and think to myself, why is this an issue? So that's just where I'm coming from.
You're fine. So the next area that we're going to look at is our bus conduct. If you'll remember, we did a pretty significant revamping of our regulation last year. The hope is that it would provide some clarification. It also was to simplify it because last year it took up, I believe, about 3 to 4 pages of our code of conduct. This year it's much more simplified. And so we went through a process where we did involve various stakeholders to provide feedback. And so what's in our code of conduct now is where we landed. The purpose, or really focusing on what's new, is that we did do away with the predetermined disciplinary consequences. The reason for that is because, as I know you're well aware, every disciplinary incident with a student, even though it has the same code, the circumstances are going to be different. And so there were situations where the predetermined consequences, quite frankly, weren't quite severe enough to meet the prohibited behavior that they were seeing on the bus. And so we thought this would provide flexibility for our administrators to better or more appropriately address the behavior. We also wanted to empower our bus drivers to address the more minor infractions, such as providing seat assignments or verbal reminders of what is and is not appropriate behavior. And then we also wanted to focus with our administrators that the behavior that is prohibited in the building is the same as on the bus, and so they should be treated similarly. Sorry. And so, again, the idea is how it would help is to empower our bus drivers because they are the ones with the students on the buses, and then also just to eliminate the ambiguity of dealing with significant behaviors when trying to stick with those prescribed penalties, and then making sure the disciplinary consequences were more in a line on the bus as they were in the building.
Ms. Jordan, I don't know, Ben, this might be something you'd be able to speak to. Have the drivers been happy? I mean, before Logan left, did he give any feedback, or since JR came in, are they?
Well, I'm happy to speak to that, but.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so in looking at the data, because if you'll notice here, our data is kind of everywhere with the bus discipline. So Ms. Moore and I did have a conversation with our secondary level administrators. We had a separate meeting with our elementary school administrators. We also spoke with transportation. There still seems to be a gap in between what the process of what's going on in the bus and then what's happening in the school. There also, I will say, if you'll remember, we did change the form. Across the board, no one is happy with the form, so we're going to take a look at that. But there also seems to be pretty consistently, there might be a way we can provide more significant training for our bus drivers just to help empower them to understand what the process is, how we carry out discipline and why, because I think there is still frustration on the bus driver side of, well, they're not doing anything. And it's not that, it's we have to follow our code of conduct. There's progressive discipline that we have to adhere to, not all the time if the behavior so arises to that level, but there's some frustration there, so we're going to be looking at what training we can provide our bus drivers as well as providing more consistency. So what we're going to do, and we'll get to this at the end of the presentation with next steps, but what we're going to do is in January, we're going to pull a group together of folks from transportation, our administrators at all levels, as well as Mr. Strong from Student Support Services, Ms. Moore and myself, and we're going to sit down at the table and start talking about how can we bridge this gap? How can we make the process run more smoothly from the bus to the school and try to eradicate some of those frustrations? And then from there, we're going to talk through, instead of looking at the regulation itself, we're going to talk through, is there something we can provide bus drivers, like a reference, a one-page maybe, and that's laminated that they have on the bus to try to, to give them a resource, the training, and then also talking with our administrators about how can they incorporate the bus drivers into their school community to have some of that tie-in, to kind of bridge that gap about what's happening in the school, what's on the bus, and just to make those that line of communication operate more smoothly. So our hope is in January, we're going to start that conversation. Based on what that is, we're hoping to roll something out for next school year.
Dr. Erskine, can I add to that? Thank you, Mrs. Jordan. And everything she just mentioned is accurate, but I do want to provide just a little glimmer of positive in all this, is the bus drivers are very appreciative that we're listening. They're very appreciative that we're addressing this. They're very appreciative that when they come forward with these concerns that something is happening now, where they felt before it was something was coming forward and they never heard anything about it. And we tried to make the changes and adjustments. We made some adjustments, but there still appears to be a gap. So we're going to come back to the drawing board and we're going to get things back in the right track. And based on what bus driver you talk to, they're going to provide different input. So for example, I was talking to a group of middle school bus drivers and they said when you have the right expectations on your bus, you don't have these behaviors that you're dealing with. And they said we don't typically write referrals, but other bus drivers who aren't as dedicated or don't have the skill set or for whatever reason, they might have some more behaviors on those buses, but we need to address that. Another group of elementary bus drivers that I spoke to, I mentioned this to the team, and this is interesting, and this is something we're going to go back to the drawing board on, is they drew my attention to the rules on the bus that's currently there. And the rules on the bus for middle school and high school are going to be a little bit different for elementary school, because they showed me the list, and the first one on there is no profane language. Well, kindergartner's not going to know what profane language means. First grader's not going to know, but use respectful words or use words, don't use curse words. So there's things that we can do better and there's things we can do differently, because they have to remind them of what those rules are, which is outside what's listed on the wall there. But to all of that, they appreciate the work we're doing, they appreciate us listening, and we're getting closer to where this needs to be. So I just wanted to add that point. I think you wanted to add something as well. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, if I may. I'm not hearing anything about widespread discipline on buses. I don't know if any of the other board members are. I mean, I've only gotten one email from a constituent in the last 2 years about an issue on the bus. So I'm assuming that other than minor glitches here and there, for the
That's
most
right.
part, everything's running pretty smoothly.
Yeah, it is not a significant issue. We've, as I've mentioned, we've come a long way over the last 3 years. We've made a lot of progress, and the number one thing is we're listening and we're taking their feedback seriously, and we're making the changes. And every bus driver that I've spoken to, and they are very honest, and I'm very appreciative of them being honest, have stated that. There's just some minor things that we're working through. So I don't want you to think that all of our buses are burning down and there's a ton of behaviors. There's just some things that we have to continue to work through.
Ms. Jordan, I just want to ask one follow-up. Can you just clarify, you were saying right now what we need to improve or what we need to revise or what going forward? Is it a process issue? I mean, is it just because we did change the form and we changed the flow of the process? Or is there a disconnect between referrals and discipline between the school and the bus, or both? I just want to make sure I understand what continues to be the weak spot.
Right, so our regulation itself, there's not any issue with the black and white of the regulation and the rules in the regulation. I think it's more of a communication from our buses to the building level. There's still, like Dr. Hummer was saying, this is not a significant problem. Like we're not looking at the data and seeing, like, oh my goodness, we've got to address this now. This is just how can we improve and how can we grow to make the process run more smoothly. Because I think it is, depending on who you talk to bus driver wise, some are very happy, some still have some frustrations, but it's just looking at across the board what we can do to bridge that gap. I think it's more of just if we put some training in place from the bus drivers to have a better perception of what discipline actually looks like, because they don't have the benefit of being in the building and being involved in the process to where they know that it's being addressed. If they see a student walk back on the bus the next day after, being them submitting a discipline referral, then There's some drivers who think, well, they're not doing anything about it, and that's not the case. So it's clarifying those things and providing training on the forefront for our bus drivers, and then also just making sure that there's a clear process of once a bus driver submits their discipline referral, how do they get follow-up from that? Even if it's thank you, we've addressed it, because I know, and I heard at like Frederick County Middle, they have a place where they put the responses to the bus referral in a box. Please correct me, Mr. Glasscock, if I'm wrong. But there's some bus drivers who didn't go to check the referrals. And so it's just those types of disconnects that you have when you have an organization as large as ours, just to try to make sure that it's running more smoothly.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, because I know that follow-up piece was one of the most common refrains we got. And I know it's labor intensive, so please don't be upset with me for saying this on camera. I used to literally walk the carbon copy out to the driver that afternoon or the next day when I was next door. And the reason was because I wanted them to know that it was dealt with. They might not have always liked what the outcome was, because we had to follow a process, but that part is important, because as we continue to try to hire bus drivers and keep bus drivers, just speaking for me, I don't want to see the reason that we struggle to hire and retain good, safe bus drivers. I really don't want to see, student discipline as the reason that gets in the way of that.
Right, and that's why we're hoping to bring everybody to the table and get ideas of what's working, what's not working, and just coming up with a more systematic approach across the division to provide, so that way, if there is any changeover in our bus drivers, there's still a process that can be easily conveyed to the new bus driver, and just to, provide a smooth transition. Yeah. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Forgot. So this is our, not sure where we were. So this is bus discipline for our elementary schools. And then I did not go to our secondary schools. So you can see there are some dips for what we saw last year compared to this year. All right, I'll pause just in case there's any additional questions based on those slides. Okay. So our next area is we're looking at bullying. As I mentioned, Mr. Strong had presented to the instruction committee the bullying prevention implementation plan. This just highlights the objective, audience, and goal of that plan, but primarily it's focusing on sixth graders and providing lessons to them that really educates them about the impact of bullying, what it looks like, how to recognize it, and also helping them develop skills of how to prevent it and appropriately respond to it. Those lessons have been taught. They're on schedule for this year. And so this is the data that we've pulled. As you can see, there are not a significant, there's only 2 discipline codes that have been inputted into Infinite Campus, Frederick County Middle and James Wood Middle. But if you look at the data that was pulled from last year with the investigations into bullying, there was 16 for the entire year. This year, there has been a total of 8. 3 of those were at the middle school level, but only 1 that went through the investigation process ended up in a disciplinary action specifically for bullying. One thing I've heard in talking with administrators is that there seems to be, because of the lessons, probably there is an increase in the word bullying from both students and parents, but once it's looked into, it doesn't meet the definition of bullying. So it does indicate that our students are listening to bullying, maybe need to pay have a better understanding of what bullying actually is. But this year there is a much more intentional effort from the division to really address bullying and get ahead of it and be proactive. And this is just another view of that data.
So if I may, I'm sorry to keep asking all these questions. So if it's being reported, I'm going to assume that means it's a significant issue, that's something that's been ongoing, but for the most part, most of this is done with just a simple counseling, correct? I mean, We're not seeing, I'm not hearing of it, so I'm not.
No.
I'm
I
not
definitely
seeing
want to
it
applaud
widespread.
the administrators to stay on top of this because it can turn into an issue. And as we know, bullying can impact mental health. It can impact students' ability to want to come to school. It can also impact students of hurting themselves, and that's the last thing that we want to have to deal with. But typically what has happened, based on conversations with administrators, is once they investigate it, there is a conflict that exists, but it's typically a conflict between two students that is a mutual conflict. So there is typically a counseling, or there is a consequence that is given, but it's not documented as a true bullying situation. It's more documented towards like a disrespect, disruption, or another code in the code of conduct. And that's typically what we're seeing. And again, please chime in, guys. Yeah.
And I guess I'm going to ask this question. Since we've enacted that cell phone policy over the last 2 years, I'm going to assume that some of those incidences have decreased since they don't have the social media going on in the school, correct?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair. Yeah, if I may, one thing I would add is Student Services does a wonderful job of putting together a bullying toolkit, which actually has the policy, has the incident form, the investigation checklist. There's a very script process and procedure for bullying because it is, while it is very serious, it is not very common for true bullying to happen where it's one-sided, not a peer conflict back and forth. And so if there's ever any interest, happy to show your work with Ms. Knight and her team to share that information with you.
Dr. Erskine, if I can. We were just having a bit of a sidebar. I find it hard to believe that there are 0 instances of bullying in a lot of our schools. The definition of bullying, I understand that is a very stalwart definition. Things have to fit into that box. Of those cases, let's just take those small cases, the ones that are actually bullying cases, as well as the others that are supposedly reported as bullying, but then research shows that they're not. Are they reported by parents? Are they reported by the students? Are they reported by other teachers or administrators? What is the source of the initial complaint for all of those?
So I can share at middle school specifically, we typically get those reports from students themselves, and parents are usually what we're seeing. If it's a true bullying case, teachers are usually able to corroborate that story. If we start investigating, they're able to shed some additional light on that. But most of the time, it's originated by either the student. We pride ourselves on the excellent counselors that we have, and they work really well together. So we have a lot of students who will start with the counselor and say, this is what's happening. I think it may be bullying. And then we also, from time to time, receive emails from parents that share similar stories, and we investigate those.
Mr. Chair. Oh, go ahead. To follow up, are these individual cases of bullying? Maybe is this one student, several times, or is this different isolated instances? So say Diana's picking on me, right? She's bullying me. Did she bully me 4 times at Sharando, or did Scott bully me once, Diana bullied me once, and then, of course, I'm putting on Erskine for the last one. Yeah. How's that work? And I know it's like, are we saying that's 4 different incidences, or could one bully have several incidences and now it's only getting reported once?
Well, it depends. And guys, please chime in. And I know you guys deal with these investigations all the time. But essentially, and to your guys' point a second ago, bullying is very clearly defined by the state and through our code of conduct. So it's not just about Mrs. Klein making fun of you one time or Dr. Erskine making fun of you. It's repetitive behavior that's happened over a long period of time. If somebody makes fun of you because you're wearing a Colonel shirt and you go to Sharando, ha ha ha, that's funny. Next day they don't say anything. Next day after that, that's just a conflict. That's Mrs. Klein shouldn't have said that to you. We address that. If it continues to happen, then it's a further conversation. So when you see these types of bullying documentation, as Mrs. Jordan just mentioned to you, which you guys have access to, please keep in mind, we've investigated numerous situations where somebody said it was bullying, but after the investigation, it was determined that it was mutual. Because if you say, hey, you have a Colonel shirt on, and then now you go back to Ms. Klein and say, well, you went to Sharando, no wonder why you said that thing. And then next thing you know, you're going back and forth. And you go home and tell your parents, hey, they just made fun of me because I'm wearing a Colonel shirt, and you call the parent up, and the parent calls them and say they were bullying my kid, and they do the investigation. It was back and forth. Now, I share all that not to be long-winded, but that's what they deal with. And that's reality, and I'm sure you do too as well, Dr. Erskine. So it's not necessarily, okay, this is a bullying incident. It wasn't repetitive. It didn't happen over a long period of time, but it was a conflict. We investigate it as a bullying, but it doesn't get documented on here. It gets documented that it was investigated. Now, if Mrs. Klein, Dr. Erskine, and Mr. Sturdivant have been calling your T-shirt and your sweatshirt everything you wear for 3 months, and it's not stopping, and then that is one incident that each of them will be documented up there, if that's kind of like what you were getting to, right?
That explains it. So
that's
it's not
one
three different
bullying
people,
incident.
Correct. Yeah, it's one. Okay,
correct.
Perfect.
Correct. Yep. Did you guys want to add to that? I know you guys deal with these all the time.
I would just share that one of the frequent codes that we do use at middle school quite a bit is the uncivil or discourteous talk. And so a lot of times, like I can speak to the one instance at Frederick County Middle, that student perhaps received that code at least once prior to this disciplinary action. So we've already used the code of uncivil, discourteous language to another student. And a lot of times, in many cases, thankfully, that is where it stops. Every once in a while, like the one that's represented, you get a case that does go beyond that, and we do the full investigation, and a code of bullying is warranted. But typically, the code that we see quite a bit, and it's usually mutual, both students receive that code of discourteous or uncivil language toward another.
Can we go back just one slide to that data table, please? So, of those four, and I can't remember. I thought RB4 was the discourteous or whatever it was language. Is the one that you're talking about included in that set of four?
No. So the discourteous language is not considered in those four codes, I don't believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that code is a different code. I want to say it's like RB 7 or 8.
Okay.
And so that's not represented in that data there. So there may be several instances of that particular code, but then only when it continues and is pervasive does it rise to the bullying code.
And I'm sorry, and I thank you for clarifying, and it's been a couple of years now, and I'm starting to lose track of them. The reason I ask the question is because if a constituent says, I'm concerned about bullying, or I've seen this, or I've read about this, our response is we have no bullying. I mean, because the data tell us, at least insofar as we can track changing student information systems over the past few years, we have no bullying in our middle and high schools. Or at least we're not disciplining for it. So I'm trying, I think I would have, the yellow flags wouldn't have popped up for me if I had seen single digit numbers or I had seen some modest data collection. I'm having trouble squaring, there is no bullying in our middle and high schools with what we're being inundated with every day in education, especially when it comes to mental health community and bullying. It would be interesting to know, and this is maybe something for you guys to think about going into the next student conduct support in January, February. How does this stack up to what our peers are seeing in our peer counties? I mean, are Clark and Warren also seeing no bullying? Because if so, then I'm wrong, right? And I'm kind of misgauging this, but something seems off to me here.
Please,
sorry, I can kind of speak on just what I've seen through emails and phone calls. At least for this year, I haven't really gotten any complaints about bullying. I've had one email from a family that I constantly get emails from that gets addressed, which I know that they have their own opinion on it, but it definitely doesn't meet any style of bullying. But I think overall, during my time on the board, I've seen it go down significantly. Not to say that there's nothing happening, and I know different representatives up here have different constituents in different areas that they look at in different schools. But as far as for Shawnee, we really haven't had it. It's been pretty nice.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I add? So a couple of things I would like to add is first, actually, I was just sidebarring here with Mrs. Jordan. I apologize, and I told her to look up neighboring counties, so we can definitely take a look at that. More than happy to pull that data. I also want to be very clear and kind of continue the messaging that we're sharing earlier. With everything that we do, we can always be better. Absolutely, we could be better with how we document, with how we're being preventative, with how we're addressing students, with how we can get the messaging out that we do not tolerate bullying because we know the impact that it has on students, that it has on families. I'm sure one of us knows somebody that has been bullied in our lifetime as kids and adults, and it's not okay. It is not okay. So we just need to make sure that, yes, right now, it does not look like the true bullying is happening in our schools. Is there conflict between students? Absolutely there is. Is there incidences where it might be bullying, it might not, just based on the definition? I guarantee there is. Is there instances where it's not being reported? I'm guaranteeing you that it is, right? Because sometimes students think that there isn't an answer, or there isn't a response, and that's why we want to continue to encourage our kids to come to a trusted adult or a parent. So I want to be very clear that we're not saying, yep, this is the data, we're going to put our hat on it, and no questions. Please know that we totally hear what you're saying in regards to we can always be better, but the definition of bullying is also very clear, and it is also very hard to track, as they've seen here. And sure, we can just say that conflict between students, we can automatically just start documenting bullying, but then that's also not going to be accurate either. So we'll pull the data to other counties to see how it compares, and we can provide that to you guys, and then we'll continue to work with our administrators. My biggest thing with bullying, and I've said this to them, and I've shared it with some of you individually, is not about tracking bullying, because I would also be very concerned if these were double-digit numbers, but it's to be proactive, right? To make sure that our students, and every time I'm out in schools, I always remind our kids to be nice, be kind, support each other. If you see something, say something. We're here to support each other. We have to protect each other to make our schools a great place to be so that we can continue to be exceptional. So I'm all about the preventative measures, which Mrs. Knight has been working with Mr. Strong on as well. So just wanted to add those pieces. Thank you.
Two things, if I may. I'm sorry to keep blaying all this. First and foremost, I mean, I've been in those schools quite a bit, and I have seen firsthand. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I've seen a lot of the opposite, where we have some really great students who have been nurturing each other and helping each other. I mean, I've witnessed it and experienced it firsthand, so I see a lot more of that than anything else. So, I mean, I don't know if it's a really widespread problem. And secondly, Ms. Jordan, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you could, for the folks that are watching at home, do you have the definitions of what RB1, RB2, and do you have what those are, that you could read them?
Yes, I do. So RB1 is bullying with no physical injury. RB2 is cyberbullying. BSC6 is bullying behavior without physical injury that continues after intervention. And then BSC7 is cyberbullying that continues after intervention. So the BSC 6 and 7 is what Mr. Glasscock was referencing, and that there was a previous disciplinary action, but then it continued, and then you use the BSC 6, BSC 7.
All right, thank you. I think that clarifies a little bit for people watching.
Okay. So the next thing we're going to look at is vaping. Mr. Strong presented to the instruction committee that we were going to implement the vaping prevention and intervention strategies. Part of the prevention plan was to provide educational awareness not only for our students, but also for our parents through social media communications, as well as providing vaping prevention and support resources for families. We also included the social emotional learning programs. And then our anonymous reporting is through our Speak Up for Safety. Now, that is used for anything connected to safety, not just vaping, but it does include vaping. And then also increase monitoring through training staff to recognize vaping devices and behaviors, and to conduct regular restroom checks. And so those have been implemented this year. We do have interventions, which there's punitive discipline and then alternatives to that. The alternatives would be through the provision of school counseling and support, and then also outside counseling and support. And you'll hear me talk in just a little bit about our New Directions program, which we're utilizing as the outside counseling and support. And then, of course, we have our punitive interventions through the Code of Conduct and the use of SBAR codes. And so if you look at this data, you can see that there's a significant increase. Again, these data points are collected from August 14th this year to December 1st this year. Same thing for this previous 2 school years. And so there is an increase. And then also we are seeing an increase with our students participating in our New Direction program. So if a student is caught with a vaping product that has tobacco or nicotine in it, once there's steps provided, but once there's 3 offenses, then they are given the option to participate in the New Direction program, which is a 10-week program that talks about developing skills such as how to resist peer pressure, and then also alternate behaviors to try to address substance abuse issues. But if there is vaping with THC, then the first offense, they are offered New Directions. And so we've seen a significant increase with participation in that program. So last year, for the entire school year, we had 49 students participate in New Directions. This year, just as of today, we've had 37 students. So you can see there's definitely our actions in trying to be more intentional in addressing this issue. We're seeing results not only through the discipline, but also through our alternative discipline processes.
Are we finding it, and I don't know, I hear different things, are we finding it that it's a significant problem in our schools, the vaping? I mean, I know I used to smoke in the bathroom when I was a kid, so that's neither here nor there, but I mean, is that a significant issue that you have to deal with? I don't know, because I'm hearing conflicting things on both ends.
It's an issue we deal with, and so it kind of ebbs and flows, but it is something that is a concern that we deal with in the schools.
But it's something significant then? Or would you say no?
I wouldn't say significant, but anytime you have even one, to us, we feel like it's significant enough because they shouldn't have it. And of course, we're looking at the long-range health. We always talk with the kids about the health implications and just their overall well-being and safety. So for me, even one is significant, but that's where we are. We're just trying to educate and get rid of that as being an issue for students.
Thank you.
All right, and so we're to our next steps. We've already talked about the meeting we're going to have with transportation and other stakeholders to talk about the bus discipline process and how we can improve that. We're also going to, we're really taking a specific look at revitalizing the use of positive behavior intervention and supports on the bus to hopefully help with the discipline issues we're seeing on the bus. While not significant in the grand scheme of things, we still want to continue to improve in that area. And then we'll continue to meet with our Code of Student Conduct Committee to receive feedback not only from parents and some of our students, but also staff and administrators. Our next meeting with that committee is scheduled April 9th. And of course, in the meantime, Ms. Moore and I will continue to look at our Code of Conduct as situations arise to figure out how we can improve, clarify, and make more efficient for the benefit of our students, staff, and families. But with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions the committee has.
I don't have a question, I do have a comment, though. And I want to reassure the public listening. I don't think that we have serious issues that are going on in our schools. I mean, they're well-run. We have decent faculty. So I again, with the bullying thing, I don't hear a lot about it. And I know that sitting on the Student Conduct and Support Committee, we don't have that many disciplinary hearings that we have to do, and I can say that it's because the staff does an excellent job. So I know I've asked a lot of questions and we brought up a lot of issues this evening, but I think our schools are run very well, and I think we have a very competent staff at all levels, and I don't want to leave the public thinking that we don't think that's the case, because I certainly agree that we have fantastic staff running the show. So.
Anybody else? Thank you, Miss Jordan, very much.
You're very welcome.
That's the last slide? Just asking. Just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yes,
Okay.
it is. That is the last one.
All right. I believe that is the end of our agenda. And Miles, it's 5:28.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Sturdivant.
I move that we adjourn.
There's been a motion to adjourn. It's been properly
Second.
seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned.